Hey boys and girls, this is lesson 610, using a half circle protractor. When you get that written in your notebook as well as today's date, come on back. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do today is complete the math message in your math journal. There's a few problems on journal page 215. When you have just the top of that, just the math message section completed, there's 3 problems there. When that's done, come on back. So when you look at page 215, there's a few things that you should notice. So I want to make sure that you can see that the rotation of your angle A, that was the acute angle that you drew, right, is less than a quarter turn. And so I mean that just like it sounds, a quarter turn. If you were standing up and you turned a quarter of the way around, that would be 90 degrees, right? The angle you drew is less than that. Okay? And the rotation of angle B that you drew is more than a quarter turn, but less than a half turn. That's why it would be considered an obtuse angle. And angle C is exactly a half turn, and that's why it's a straight angle. You should also notice the different kinds of angles and their degrees that are written underneath, well, actually above and beneath. So you can see that it tells you that any angle that measures less than 90 degrees is an acute angle, right? We know that. We know an obtuse angle, it measures more than 90 and less than 180. And a straight angle is exactly 180. So to add to that, you also should make sure you know that a right angle is exactly 90 degrees, and a reflex angle is between 180 and 360 degrees. If you don't yet have those different angles in your notebook from any of the lessons we've done, make sure you have those written down for yourself. They're really good to have on hand. It's a great reference. So go ahead and take care of that. I did draw beneath here the reflex angle to be sure that you know what I'm talking about when I say the reflex angle. So it's greater than 180 and less than 360, and that's an example of one down below. Okay. So let's compare the 2 different types of angle measurers that there are. So in the last lesson we talked about the full circle protractor that can measure up to 360 degrees. You can see that there's one scale on it. The numbers are only on there once. You should know that for both types of angle measurers, the full circle, which we have looked at before, and now the half circle protractor, both of them are comprised of angles because they're being used to measure angles, so that would have to be. They both have a numbered scale, and they both measure in degrees. Okay? And then the half circle protractor, things you should know about that, we're going to be using those today. So things you should know, they measure from 0 to 180 degrees. It has 2 scales, one that goes clockwise, you can see that here, so the outside set of numbers is going clockwise from 0 to 180, and then counterclockwise, the inside, 0 to 180. The 0 degree mark on one side is connected by a line segment with the 180 degree mark on the other side, and this segment from here to here is the baseline of the protractor. Okay? You have this kind of protractor also on your template. So you have both kinds that you can use. We'll be using the half circle one in the lesson today. After you have some of these notes written down in your notebook, then you can come on back. Pause this until you're ready. Okay, so I want to talk about one thing about angles that we haven't really spent any time on. So if you look at the 2 that I've drawn there, and I said, well, what kind of angles are those? I want you to know that you really couldn't answer that right now. And the reason why is because I haven't given you what you need to be able to do that. All right? So there needs to be an arc that shows you if I'm talking about the inside angle here, or if I'm talking about the reflex angle here. Okay? Those should be there for you so that you know which part you're supposed to be measuring, because both of them are correct. I could be talking about either one. Now I do want you to know if there isn't one listed, they always mean this kind. Okay? So if you're ever looking at an angle and it doesn't tell you what you're talking about, what part's being measured, always think this one. But you really should be in the habit of marking what angle is being talked about. All right, I hope that helps you as we move forward. All right, so I want to talk about how you use the half circle protractor to measure an angle. So I have an angle there. I've drawn it with 2 rays like usual. And the first thing I would do when I look at that is say to myself, okay, so what kind of angle is that? Well, it's an acute little angle, right? Because it's not marked, so I'm going to look at the inside one. That's an acute angle. So in my mind, I know if it was, let's see, if it was here, that's 90 degrees. I think the one I have drawn is a little less than halfway, because in my mind halfway is going to be about right there between here and here, right? It looks a little less than that, so I'm going to guess somewhere around 30-ish probably is what that would be if I'm guessing, okay? So I do that first step and give myself a mental image. Then I would take my protractor and I'm going to line up the center mark of the protractor. So this center spot right here with the vertex of my angle. Okay, that's what I'm showing here. So you can see that the center of the baseline of the protractor is on the center of the angle, which is the vertex. Okay, then I make sure that I have this baseline flat across my one of the rays of my angle. And then I look to see, so where does the other angle tell me this is being measured? And you can see on this protractor, some people get confused because there's 2 sets of numbers I could be looking at. I can look at a little less than 30 or a little more than 150. But I don't really have to wonder that because I did that first step where I told myself it's an acute angle. So I know an acute angle means it's less than 90 degrees. So the 150 something can't possibly be right. So I have to be using the internal one. So I always go with that. Then I also know that I'm lined up on the 0 right there. The 0 is an internal number that I'm using. So I'm going to use the internal number that's being represented by right there. And I'm going to say this is 28 degrees. So my guess of 30 was pretty good. It actually measures 28 degrees. All right, that is how you use a half circle protractor. You're going to get to practice that now on the rest of page 215, the bottom section, measuring angles with the protractor. You'll have 3 problems to do. So go give that a try. The top line is asking, is it an acute angle? Is it an obtuse? A reflex? What kind of angle is it? And then the bottom one is asking, so what's the actual measure using the protractor? All right, so go ahead and check that out. And here are the answers to that page. So I hope that you saw that angle SDE is an acute angle. This right here. We're measuring this inside, SDE, or I could say EDS, right? But they're saying SDE, and it's an acute angle, and if I measured it, it's 55 degrees. If you're within 3 of this, you are good. CDR, or COR, I should say, I guess, that's an acute little angle as well, and it's 40. And then RTV is an obtuse, so more than 90 but less than 180, and it's 140 degrees. I hope that you are in good shape as far as that goes. So now take a look at page 216 in your math journal. 216 is all about drawing angles using the half circle protractor. So here are the steps to do it off here to the right. So first I'm going to draw a ray. After I have my ray drawn, so let's see, I could label this for you. So that's number 1. Draw the ray. Number 2, I'm going to put my protractor so that the center of the protractor is lined up with the end point of my ray. and 3. I'm going to mark the degree on the outside here. See what I'm doing right here? I've made a mark at 35, and I know I'm using the outside one because I'm using the outside numbers where I look to see where I've lined up my protractor here. The 0 is sitting on the outside, and I'm always going to line mine up to a 0. So the 0 is on the outside. I'm going to look at the outside numbers. I'm looking. I find 35. I make a mark that's on the outside there. And then I'm going to slide my protractor over so that I can have a straight edge to go from the vertex to where that line is, and I'll draw a line right there. That is how I use my protractor, half circle protractor, to draw an angle. Okay, so for number 1, yours should look pretty similar to what I have right here. If the line was drawn right there, that's what yours should look like right here. You would be lining up your center with the center of your protractor, that is, the center of the baseline, with the H, and then you will mark it over here somewhere, and you'll be drawing it. Okay, so these should be pretty straightforward. Go ahead and do the top part of this page, although there is one that we'll be talking about in a second here. Oh, no, I think I decided you could just give it a go. Oh, so when you look at problem number 5, though, it is a try this problem. I am going to be really curious to see how many of you tried that and could figure it out. I have faith that if you really want to, you'll be able to. A 330-degree angle. How can I use a half circle protractor to figure that out? Use those big old brains and do some problem solving. I think you'll have it. All right. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow.